Shana Tova. You know, it's never been easy, not since our founding rabbi, Rabbi Edward Benjamin Morris Brown, to be the rabbi of Park Avenue Synagogue. Hungarian-born, fluent in 6 languages, Rabbi Brown, or Alphabet Brown as he was known due to his penchant for signing his name with all of the letters of all of his degrees, was the rabbi of Congregation Gates of Hope in the 1880s, which merged in 1882 with Agudat Yesharim, which became the congregation you and I know as Park Avenue Synagogue. In addition to his leadership of our community at the time of its founding, Rabbi Brown held a friendship with Ulysses S. Grant, General of the Union Army and 18th President of the United States. Rabbi Brown visited Grant regularly as his health declined, and on the Sabbath of Grant's passing in 1885 declared from the pulpit, quote, "The Jews have lost a great friend in the death of General Grant." Brown elevated Grant's stature above even that of Moses, proclaiming Moses liberated 3 million of people, his own brethren, from Egyptian bondage. Grant liberated 3 million of people, a race not his own, from American bondage, and concluded with a call for the entire congregation to rise to recite Kaddish. Not surprisingly, Rabbi Brown was asked to be an honorary pallbearer for the funeral set to take place here in New York City. Rabbi Brown's unrestrained outpouring of grief for Grant was far from a given amongst American Jews. Grant, a Republican, was not an uncontroversial figure. His personal life was marked by excess and indulgence. His business record, checkered. He was elected president despite lacking in prior political experience. And his leadership was marked by political and economic scandal, a legacy that continues to be debated today. For American Jews, Grant's legacy would be forever sullied for having signed General Order Number 11, the most, quote, notorious anti-Jewish official order in American history. Issued in 1862 during the Civil War, in a story best told by historian Dr. Jonathan Sarna, Grant called for the expulsion of Jews as a class from Tennessee, Mississippi, and Kentucky. In the eyes of many Jews, Grant's infamous decree, though rolled back quickly by Lincoln, forever labeled him an enemy of our people. Things came to a head in the election of 1868. Brown's once mentor, the nationally renowned Rabbi Isaac Mayer Wise, was a dyed-in-wool Democrat and a fierce critic of the abolitionists and their repeated use of anti-Semitic rhetoric and tropes. Rabbi Wise believed that the cause of African Americans came at the expense of American Jewry, and to vote for Grant was a betrayal of Jewish self-interest. Others, such as Louisville attorney and uncle to the future Justice Louis N. Dembitz, sought to rehabilitate Grant, believing that Grant's efforts on behalf of Reconstruction more than mitigated his earlier anti-Jewish missteps and the latent anti-Semitism of the progressives. Besides, as Rabbi Liebman Adler, rabbi of Chicago's oldest synagogue, would argue, American Jews must not vote as Jews, but as American citizens. In Adler's words, quote, if the party in whose hands I believe the welfare of the country was the safest were to place a Haman, the enemy of the Jews, at the helm of state, and the opposite party, whose non-existence I believe would be better for my country, were to place the Messiah at their head, Moses as a chief justice, and the patriarchs to the cabinet, I should say, prosper under Haman, my fatherland, and here you have won my vote, even if all the Jew in me mourns. American Jews faced a conundrum. There were Jews who believed as Jews that their priority must be their parochial well-being. There were also Jews who believed as Jews that they were obligated to prioritize the progressive Republican agenda over their own. Should a Jew vote for a party he or she considers bad for the country to avoid voting for a person perceived to be bad for the Jews? Should a Jew prioritize the progressive agenda if doing so runs contrary to Jewish self-interest? What is the self-interest of the Jewish community anyway, and who gets to decide it? Grant would be elected in 1868 and again in 1872, but his leadership continued to split American Jewry. Whether due to pragmatism, penance, or principle, Grant's administration included more Jews than any of his predecessors. Grant intervened to assist Jews abroad facing persecution and pogrom, making the unprecedented decision of appointing a Jewish consul to Romania. Grant was the first president to attend a synagogue dedication, all 3 hours of it, God bless him. Post-presidency, ours will be shorter. Post-presidency, Grant was the first American president to set foot in Jerusalem. By many metrics, Grant was good for the Jews. By others, no way. American Jewry was fiercely divided on what their Judaism called on them to do. So you can only imagine the stir it caused when my predecessor, Rabbi Brown, was called on to serve as one of the honorary pallbearers of Grant's funeral. In addition to Grant's disputed legacy amongst Jews, in addition to other New York rabbis being annoyed that Brown, rabbi of an upstart uptown synagogue, was picked to represent all of American Jewry, there was a small matter that the day of his funeral, August 8, 1885, fell on Shabbat. Reform rabbi he was, Brown was a traditionalist at heart, a proud Jew and an opponent of the then movement to shift the Sabbath to Sunday. On that day, representing all Jews, there was no way that Brown would ride in a carriage and break the Sabbath. Brown's congregation, like American Jewry as a whole, was split. Like most rabbis, Rabbi Brown didn't mind the limelight. Like most rabbis, Rabbi Brown quite liked having a job. Should he or shouldn't he participate in the funeral procession? What, oh what, would our founding rabbi do? But before I tell you, Happy New Year! Shana Tova to each and every one of you. Today is Rosh Hashanah, our annual check-in and our check-up. The day we're instructed to take the pulse of the Jewish people, reflect on our place within our wider humanity, and the roles we have to play to strengthen our world into the year ahead. The headlines we know are not good. Not for the world, and not for the Jews. A year of environmental crises, a year of gun violence, refugees across the globe and at our own border, a year of rising anti-Semitism, violent attacks in Pittsburgh, Poway, Brooklyn, Europe, and elsewhere, a year of a progressive left increasingly inhospitable to the pro-Israel community and the Jewish community, another year of conflict for Israel, a proxy war with Iran, the prospects of peace between Israel and her neighbors, a two-state solution as elusive as ever, impeachment proceedings just announced, and not one but two, possibly a third election in Israel, which, whatever the outcome, has served to spotlight the growing divides between American Jewry and Israel. We do not lack for crises. I have my list, and I'm sure you have yours. Real problems, global and local, increasing in intensity. And our Jewish community stands in the whirlwind. Jew pitted against Jew. Our already small community fractured further over the question of what is in the best interest of our people. Jews who believe, as Jews, that they must express outrage at the erosion of progressive values, who are demanding, as Jews, that we redouble our liberal commitments to mend the world in America, around the globe, and in Israel. And there are other Jews who believe, as Jews, that the aforementioned Jews are delusional. Those progressives, they're no friends of Jews. As Jews, our concern is the security and safety of half of our people residing in the Jewish state. It is the self-interest of our people, not the cause of the environment, gun control, the right to choose, the composition of the Supreme Court, or anything else that must be our priority. And because ours is a chilling era of intersectional politics, ideological purity, and public shaming, we've lost the ability to do the one thing that Jews across the spectrum pride themselves on doing: talk to each other. In our politics, within our communities, and even around our dinner tables, we call each other out as self-hating or disloyal, and we question each other's allegiance, an ugly schism in our ranks that has spilled into public view. And at the core of it all, no different than in the time of Rabbi Brown, is a question of defining the Jewish self-interest. What exactly, as Jews, are we called on to do? If we believe something or someone to be good for the Jews but bad for the country, or bad for the Jews but good for the country, which takes priority? Which gives way to what? Us or them? The particular or the universal? Given the imperfect choices available, what path shall we choose? As long as Jews have been Jews, this struggle to order our priorities towards ourselves and others has shaped the contour of our being. When Abraham was first called by God, his charge was twofold. On the one hand, Lech Lecha, go to the promised land, a specific promise for a chosen people with a unique destiny. On the other hand, Veheye bracha, and you shall be a blessing. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed by you. In our Torah reading today, Sarah, fearing for the safety of her child, prioritizes her own household and casts out Hagar, only for Hagar to be saved by God from certain death soon thereafter. The Exodus from Egypt, our particular story of national redemption, also the story that reminds us of our obligations to the stranger, for we were once strangers in a strange land. Or consider today's very celebration, Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harat Olam, the day the world was created, not the first Jew, but the first human, the ancestor of collective humanity. And yet we also have another new year, Nisan, the month of Passover, commemorating the birth of the Jewish nation and the beginning of our peoplehood. Our parochial commitments affirmed alongside our universal ones, today and every day of the year. This is the dialectical tension embedded within every Jewish soul since our very beginning. Some call it a tension, some a contradiction, some a hyphen. Call it what you will, but it's this concomitant commitment to our universal imperatives and our particularistic responsibilities that is the double helix and defining strength of Jewish DNA. It's what inspired some Jews in the 1880s to come to our country's teeming shores in this synagogue, inspired by the vision of Emma Lazarus, and other Jews during the same years to the shores of Palestine, inspired by the Zionist vision of Leon Pinsker. It's why 1948 marks not just the declaration of the State of Israel, but also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, both documents drafted by Jews. It's why every organization committed to human rights over the last 100 years, the ACLU, Amnesty International, the NAACP, has had a Jew in the room at its founding. That is a secret sauce of our people, concern for ourselves and concern for others. No one put it better than the great sage Hillel, who himself lived in a time of social upheaval as Jews had to prioritize their commitments to themselves and to others. Some people love to quote the first part of Hillel's famed aphorism, Im ein ani li mi li, if I am not for myself, then who will be for me? Some people love to quote the second part, Ukesha'ani la'atzmi ma'ani, but if I am only for myself, then what am I? Both groups are wrong. To be a Jew is not one or the other, but both, or more directly, the pause, the breath we take between the two statements. Amor mundi, love of humanity, alongside Ahavat Yisrael, love of Israel. This is the core of our Jewish self-understanding. You know, this year I've arrived at the disorienting and undoubtedly fleeting state of affairs to see my children actually live the values I've been drilling into them throughout their lives. Fleeting, I know. One daughter is in Israel for a gap year before arriving at the other promised land of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Another daughter has taken on a more observant Jewish life, taping the refrigerator to the on position over Shabbat, double-checking the kashrus of everything brought into home, and davening a whole bunch, reminding me of what my father said to me when I told him I wanted to be a rabbi. Elliot, you know we always wanted you to be a proud Jew. We just never thought you would take us so seriously. And my son, at least for the time being, is pretty darn near perfect. But it was my second daughter, the one presently applying to college, who caught me off guard the other week. We were sitting in the college counselor's office reviewing the likelies, the targets, and the reaches, at which point my daughter lifted her head up, welling up, and said, "We're forgetting one option, that I make Aliyah and join the IDF." Talk about be careful what you ask for. The look on the college counselor's face was priceless. Probably mine too. Shall she direct her passions to pursue a humanities degree on a liberal college campus, or lean into Jewish history by supporting the Jewish state? She is torn. I am torn. And it doesn't help that the Zuckerman kid just made Aliyah. I have no idea how her story will turn out, but I will tell you this. I am proud. I am deeply proud. I am proud of her struggle. I am proud she is torn, and I am proud to have both voices in her head and around my dinner table. My concern, in a sentence, is that we've lost our ability to countenance, to embrace, to take pride in the dual aspect of what it means to be an American Jew. Somewhere along the way, the very strength of our people has been turned against us by us. We've forgotten that Jews, those Jews demonstrating on behalf of the environment, those Jews protesting what's happening at our borders, those Jews acting as Jews in the name of Jewish values, they are us and we are them, and we should be proud of them and we should support them. And we have also forgotten that those Jews fighting for the safety and security of our people at home and abroad, they are also us. And we are also them, and we should be proud of them, and we should support them and the Jewish values they are acting on. We need Jewish Democrats outraged by anti-Semitism emanating from the left, just as we need Jewish Republicans outraged by anti-Semitism coming from the right. We need Jews in all camps, in positions of leadership, correcting the abuses and excesses of both sides. Most of all, we need Jews who refuse to let the world make them choose between the universal and the particular. We need Jews willing to stand proudly as Jews on behalf of our people and our shared humanity. So what, some of you may still be wondering, did Rabbi Brown decide? Initially, Brown requested that he be allowed to walk and not ride in the procession, a request that was refused. But given the friendship, the Grant family interceded and gave Brown special dispensation to foot it, which is exactly what Brown did, all 7.5 miles from City Hall to Riverside Park, with the whole city watching. The Jewish community, and this community by extension, not surprisingly, was divided. Some lauded Brown for having honored Grant and the Sabbath. Others excoriated him for having participated in the procession at all. But something else happened on that fateful day as Brown walked the length of Manhattan with the whole city watching. Brown's public display of faith and patriotism caught the public imagination, who sat up and took note of this Jew who embraced and affirmed his people and his country, the particular and the universal, at one and the same time. It was something that nobody of any background thought could be done. What Brown did wasn't important just for him or for American Jewry. What Brown did that day was important for an America who didn't know that it was possible to be loyal to one's faith and one's nation, one's kinsmen and one's countrymen at one and the same time. America deeply needed a model of how to negotiate the competing loyalties tearing away at its soul, and on that day it was a Jew, Rabbi Brown, who provided the model for all Americans, which is basically what Rabbi Brown's great-granddaughter told me when I spoke to her this past summer. At 95 years old, Janice Rothschild Bloomberg is not just a great-granddaughter of Rabbi Brown, she's also the Rebbitzin to the late Rabbi Jacob Rothschild, rabbi of the temple in Atlanta of Driving Miss Daisy fame, the one that was bombed by the Ku Klux Klan in 1958 due to her husband's friendship with Martin Luther King Jr. and his outspoken leadership in the civil rights movement. At 95 years old, the Rebbitzin is as sharp as a tack, regaling me not just with her predictions of coalition politics in Israel, but with stories of her great-grandfather. My favorite, her telling of a game they played when she was a little girl. She would jump repeatedly into his arms to be caught until that time he didn't catch her, to which he would say, "Now you know never to trust a Hungarian, even if it's your great-grandfather." And with her permission, I'd like to share with you her reflections on her great-grandfather's decision and the enduring legacy of Rabbi Brown. The Rebbitzin told me that all American rabbis, and for that matter, all American Jews, are asked to choose between being a proud Jew and a proud citizen, between their faith and their patriotism, between their particular commitments and their universal ones. Rabbi Brown was asked to choose, just as the late Rebbitzin's husband, Rabbi Rothschild, proud Zionist and proud advocate for civil rights, was, by way of a bomb, told he had to choose. Every Jewish generation is told they can't have it both ways. The legacy of Rabbi Brown was that he rejected the choice, or more precisely, he chose both. He took a stand and he walked the 7.5 miles to punctuate the point. After all, the most important part of Hillel's aphorism isn't the first part, if I'm not for myself, and it's not the second part, if I'm only for myself, or for that matter, the breath between the two. The most important part of Hillel's aphorism is how it ends. Ve'im lo achshav ematai. If not now, then when? The enduring lesson of Rabbi Brown is that he refused to sit on his hands and do nothing. He took his commitments to his faith and to his country, to his people, and to his shared humanity, and he wore them all proudly for all the world, for people of all backgrounds to see. And that is the legacy of Rabbi Brown, and that is the DNA of this community, and that is what it means to be an American Jew, and that is the calling of the hour. The stakes are too high on too many fronts for us to sit this round out. When you walk into this synagogue, you may hear a sermon about the threat of anti-Semitism, and you may hear a sermon about the threat of climate change. You may be asked to mobilize on behalf of Israel's defense, and you may be asked to mobilize regarding the humanitarian crisis at our borders. And you should be proud to hear both messages from this pulpit, and you should mobilize. Depending on the company you keep, you may find yourself with Jews leaning this way or that way, questioning the loyalties of Jews who think otherwise. Be the upstander. Be the person who stops the conversation mid-sentence and say, you may disagree with their views, I may disagree with their views, but their views, they are rooted in Jewish sources and a love for the Jewish people. And should you be told that you need to choose between the particular and the universal, or as is more likely, are just so exhausted and confused that you're tempted to throw up your hands because it's just too complicated to take a stand, fight that urge. If not now, then when? Now is the time to stand up for justice. If not now, then when? Now is the time to stand up against anti-Semitism. Now is the time to take the cause of Israel up and to address our climate crisis. If we in this room, blessed as we are, with the political, social, and philanthropic wherewithal to move the needle on the urgent issues of the hour, representing more or less the sane center, the moral ballast of the American Jewish community, abdicate our role in the unfolding dramas of our time, then we will have failed not only our forebears, failed not only the calling of the hour, but we will have failed our children and our grandchildren. If not now, when? If, as the saying goes, you've ever wondered what you would have done if you were alive in the time of civil rights, in the time of the Six-Day War, in 1942, in 1882, now is the time to find out. If there is one message of these holidays, it's that we have a limited time to make a difference in this world. Now is the time to lead by way of example. Ours is not the first era in which Jews have openly wrestled to define the Jewish self-interest. Ours is not the first hour that the Jewish commitment to our people and the Jewish commitment to our shared humanity must be negotiated. This is not the first Rosh Hashanah that Jews have been called on to take a stand on the issues of the day. So let us resolve to do what must be done, to stand up for our beliefs, to wrestle with them openly and honestly, in respectful dialogue with those who differ. Let us debate ideas, but not allegiance. Let us judge each other generously as we ourselves would wish to be. In Lincoln's own words, we are not enemies, but friends. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. This is our time to lead, to serve as an example for all of American Jewry, for all of our country, which once again is in such desperate need of healing. Shana Tova.